Hey guys, it feels like forever since I've done one of these solo podcasts, so I thought it was about time that I jump back on here and have a yarn with you all. I've had a couple of guests on. I think it's probably been about 10 episodes since I did a solo podcast. But anyways, welcome back to the Interchange podcast, and thanks for joining me, your host, Ben Lowe. Before we go any further, as per always, you've heard it before, but if you haven't already, please go and subscribe and share this with just one of your friends, because as you know, the more eyes and ears we can get on the podcast, the bigger and better guests I can bring you guys, and in turn, the more value I can deliver and the more hope and help that I can provide. Anyways, so something occurred to me recently that this is something that's occurred to me a lot through my life, okay? But it's something sort of sparked in my brain, and it came back to where we draw motivation from. But something that I noticed as of late is that I've taken my foot off the gas, right? When it came to business, when it came to finances, when it came to, driving forward, wanting to actually make progress, I've really taken my foot off the gas. And this is something that I noticed probably about a month ago, maybe even 2 months ago. And it seemed to be a bit of a pattern that happened, right? And the pattern that I noticed is that when things started to go well, I'd get comfortable and I'd take my foot off the gas a little bit, and I wouldn't be messaging as many people, and I wouldn't be driving my business as hard, and I wouldn't be training as hard, and I wouldn't be, going as hard on all the things that I would usually go hard on in my life. And it sort of occurred to me that this comes back to motivation, right? And we all speak about motivation. It's like, I'm not motivated to do this, I'm not motivated to do that. And obviously there's like the debate between motivation and discipline and which one's really going to help you out. But the thing is, to get started, we do need motivation. That's a fact, right? Discipline is what keeps us going, but motivation is what gets us started. And there's only two motivators in life, right? There's pain or there's pleasure. In other words, we want to move away from pain, right? We've got something that's so fucking painful that we need to change it. We want to move towards pleasure. We've got this big goal that we're working towards. We know that it's going to create this amazing feeling state or this emotional response. So we're moving towards that thing. And so if there's only two motivators in life, where do you think most of us spend our time? Yeah, that's right. Moving away from pain, which is great, like I said, as a motivator to get us started. But then what happens when we aren't in pain? Where do we get our motivation from? And so I'm going to use the example of fitness, as I always do, because it just applies to so many things, right? So you start an 8-week challenge, you want to lose 10 kilos. And the reason you want to lose 10 kilos is because you don't want to be fat. You don't want to be ugly. You don't want to feel like shit anymore. So that would be an away from pain motivator. And so you do the thing, you lose the 10 kilos, you get to the end of the 8-week challenge, but then all of a sudden you spiral out of control and you end up back at square one. You're like, what's going on here? Why does this happen? And so you swing on the pendulum again, you lose more weight again, but then you get to the point where you want to be, and then all of a sudden you find yourself back at square one. Sound familiar? Well, this is because most of us spend 99% of our time in the away from pain motivation rather than towards pleasure. And because we're trying to move away from pain, once we get ourselves out of pain, we haven't got the motivation to keep going. We haven't got that driving force. And most of us haven't built the discipline around these things yet to actually make sure that we can stay away from the thing we're trying to move away from, but also continue moving towards the thing we do want to move towards. And so this is why the away from pain motivator is only good as a temporary thing. Because, and this is once again something that I noticed in my life, I wanted to get away from pain. Okay, cool. So back to when I used to use drugs heavily. So I don't want to feel like shit anymore. So what I'd do, I'd stop using drugs, I'd stop drinking, I'd go really hard on my fitness, I'd go really hard on my business, I'd do everything I had to do, feel really good. And then 8 weeks passed, 9 weeks passed, 12 weeks passed, and I'm like, I feel pretty fucking good. Maybe I'll go and celebrate by doing that thing I said I wasn't going to do, the alcohol, the drugs, the partying, the, womanizing, whatever it might have been. And then all of a sudden I'm back in the spiral. And so I get myself to a point where I'm like, I feel like shit again. I'm back to where I started. And I'd find the motivation to get myself out of pain. And this is because I was using that away from pain motivator as opposed to a towards pleasure. So what would a towards pleasure motivation look like, you ask me? Well, instead of asking or trying to strive for something you want to move away from, I don't want to feel like shit. I don't want to lose my partner. I don't want to be fat anymore. I don't want to be broke. Right? This is another one that comes up a lot for me, is when I notice that my income might start to dwindle, because obviously with the line of work that I do, it's very up and down from time to time. And if I haven't set myself up with structure and having processes in place to make sure that I am continually talking to people and bringing in new clients and whatnot, then it's very easy for it to slip away. And I'll go from being comfortable to being really uncomfortable really quickly. And so this has actually happened again for me recently. I lost almost half my income in a few weeks due to clients finishing up on their programs and I hadn't done any work to get new clients in the door. And so once again, that away from pain motivation was, I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to go back to having nothing. So all of a sudden I was motivated again. And I really pulled my fucking finger out and started doing the work that I needed to do to attract the new clients. But once again, like I said, this is something that's played out time and time again. I get to a certain point and then I fall back to square one because I haven't got that thing to keep me going. And this hasn't got anything to do with discipline in this case. This is because there's no motivation there. The goals that I set are away from pain. They're not towards pleasure. And so instead of having a goal around, I don't want to be broke, you might set a goal around, I want to have X, Y, and Z, right? So it's, I want to have $1 million. And why do you want to have $1 million? Because that $1 million is going to make me feel more confident. It's going to make me feel more sure of myself. It's going to give me more certainty in my life. It's going to give me this feeling state of being the fucking man, right? When I make my first million, you know, at 30 years old, that's not too bad. Like, I know there's a lot of people that make millions of dollars before they turn 30, but if I can make $1 million by the time I'm 35, I'd be fucking stoked. And that there is a towards pleasure motivator because it's not just the money I'm working towards. It's the feeling state and the emotion attached to this. And the beautiful thing about a towards pleasure goal is you continually move the goalposts. So once I get to $1 million, it's like, well, now I want to reach 1.5. You move the goalposts. You're still chasing the same thing, right? And it gives you the same emotional response. Whereas if it's away from pain motivator, if the away from pain motivator is I don't want to be broke, I want to make 10 grand, or I want to have an income of 3 grand per week because I'm trying to move away from pain, I don't want to be broke, in other words, you get to the 3 grand per week and you hit that glass ceiling, bing bong, you fucking hit the ceiling, you fall back down. You hit the ceiling again, you fall back down. You hit the ceiling again, and what happens? You guessed it, you keep falling back down because the goal that you've set isn't actually towards pleasure, it's away from pain. Once you're out of pain, you then no longer have that motivation to keep moving forward. And so a lot of the time we fall back into old habits. So I want you to think about a time in your life where you've set a goal and after a few weeks of setting that goal, you found yourself spiraling. And I actually speak to a lot of my clients about this as well, because with what I do with coaching around, you know, self-sabotage and behaviors that are keeping people stuck, a lot of the time it's an away from pain motivator. They have a real big blowout on the drugs or a real big blowout on the piss. They make an absolute cunt of themselves. They're having a fight with their missus. Their relationship's in jeopardy. So the thing that they're trying to move away from is not having a broken relationship or not losing their partner. And so once they get themselves to a happy place, you know, they're feeling really good. And I usually say this is about the 4 to 6 week mark. That subconscious kicks back in and it's like, things are pretty good now. Let's go and do the thing we used to do, because there's no need to keep doing what we're doing now because we haven't got any motivation to stay away from pain. You know, we're not in pain at the moment. So we can go back to doing the things we were originally doing because the subconscious still hasn't changed, right? And obviously, as you guys know, change takes time. If you want to move away from pain, it's a great way to get started, but you want to set those towards pleasure goals to help you stay on track and stay on the path that you're on to overcome whatever it is you're overcoming, but also to continue to move forward. And so my challenge to you today is to look at your goals that you have for yourself and ask yourself, are your goals helping you to move away from pain or helping you to move towards pleasure? Because if you've got away from pain goals, they will be fleeting, they'll be temporary. Yes, you might reach a result, but you'll probably find that before too long, you end up back at square one, or at least you fall back down and you have this sort of, you know, up and down sort of momentum. You know, it's like this almost like an ECG reading, right? It's like up, down, up, down, up, down. And yeah, you might be climbing slowly, but imagine what it would be like if you were able to actually consistently make progress in the right direction. Sure, you're going to have little slip ups, but not to the point where you're falling back to square one and then having to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and then find that other thing to motivate yourself. So set yourself some towards pleasure goals. I want to buy a house because it's going to give me X, Y, and Z, as opposed to I want to buy a house because I'm sick of living in rent and paying on someone else's bills. I want to start a new career because I want to take on new skills and I want to give myself the opportunity to get a higher income, right? What is that career? What does it look like? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? As opposed to, I hate my fucking job, I want to find a new job, all right? That's not going to keep you momentum. That's going to get you to the new job, but then after you get to the new job, then what? You know, you probably slack off and you probably lose motivation to keep showing up the way you did when you first started that job because you're in so much pain, you had so much gratitude to get the new job, then all of a sudden you get complacent with the new job and you're no longer in pain. So it's like, well, I've got this job now, I can just slack off again. I haven't got the motivation to show up for myself. But you see what I mean, right? Those probably aren't the best examples, but you get what I'm talking about, right? It's away from pain would be, like I said, I want to lose 10 kilos because I feel fat and ugly. Okay, no longer feeling fat and ugly, and then all of a sudden those healthy habits slip and you end up back eating shit. You end up drinking like shit. You end up taking drugs every weekend and partying every weekend. And like I said, this is things that I see playing out, and it's generally for people around the 4 to 6 week mark that I work with because they're out of pain, they're making really good progress, and all of a sudden they haven't got the motivation they once had. And so this is why it's really important to revisit the goals that you have and make sure that they are towards pleasure and not away from pain. Like I said, away from pain is great to get started, but it won't help you to get to where you want to go long term. So with that, and this is the thing, like if you are struggling with this and you have towards pleasure goals, if you have away from pain goals, don't worry, you're not alone. 90% of people use pain as a motivator, right? And they always have to find themselves in a state of pain. But I don't know about you, but I would much rather be, leveling up and making progress in my life from a place of pleasure and actually enjoying it and not having to fall back into pain every time that I started to do well to keep myself moving forward because I, lost the momentum and became complacent. So just a little thing to ponder there is, is it that you're currently using pain as a motivator or is it you're using pleasure? Because they are both motivators. They are both things that will be able to motivate us to take action. However, the pain is generally the stronger motivator because for a lot of people, that's what it takes to get their ass moving and obviously get things into gear. But once you get things moving, towards pleasure goal is what's going to keep you in momentum. English is what's going to keep you in momentum. I can't even get my words out today. It's just hilarious. Anyways, so yeah, I want to leave you with that. That's the one thing I wanted to talk about today was towards pain or away from pleasure. So ask yourself, which one are you currently? Because that will give you a big indication as to how your life will play out. Peace. See you on the next episode.